Hello, hello, is this thing on? Hello? Howdy. There we go. Welcome in to our vote counts semi-weekly candidates roundtable to all the people trickling in. I hope that you will find this event pleasant, worth your time, worth your while, a learning experience. Hope you have a little bit of fun. Hope you come with some questions. We're going to have a lot of candidates. I just received word just a few minutes ago of another candidate joining us. So we should have a full house here in a few minutes. During that time that we're waiting for people to come in, oh gosh. Listen, I'm hot. I'm sweating. I forgot what I was saying. Repost the live, please. Add it to your story. There's so many ways to share this. While I'm waiting for people, I'm going to press down on the prompt and I'm going to share it out to all of my followers. Let the people know. Somewhere sitting in somebody's DMs is like 100 notifications about OVC TikTok Live town halls. And I can tell you exactly who it is. And I told him that I send him these notifications. And he don't even check his DMs. But he got a DM full of these. And he gonna keep getting them. Because I want people to be here and hear what these candidates are saying. Not because I support them, not because I like them, but because I believe an informed citizenry is the best kind of citizenry. You can't do nothing for me if you don't know anything. And I'd rather you vote because you know about all the options. You know about their backgrounds. You know about the backgrounds of the legislation you're voting on. You know how it would benefit you. You know how the person you're voting for would benefit your community. I'd rather you vote because you are armed with knowledge than because somebody told you to vote, or because the person's face looks cute on TV, or because they're a billionaire businessman who used to have a TV show and appeared in some movie called Home Alone 2. So please share this with your followers. Share it out, share it some more. Come in, tap the screen. Listen to me saying tap the screen. I'm going to tap the screen so we can get these likes up. And I'm also going to see if we got Amanda Hollowell. We got Carter for Arkansas. We got Kendra Clark. So far. Are you okay, Amanda?
Oh my God, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay. You know, you can mute yourself if you need a second to...
I just jumped on, and I know Kendra. Hey, Kendra.
Hello.
Hey, Kendra, how you doing?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. We're waiting for a few other people. While we're waiting, I have taken the time to prepare myself for this by eating a handful of Skittles. I hope that you all are equally or exceedingly more prepared than I am. That was a joke. I need sugar sometimes. I need sugar before I do this, honestly. I need a handful of sugar. Please excuse my... Hi, Carter. How are you?
Hello, hello. How you doing?
Great.
Awesome. That is awesome. It's good to see everyone.
It's good to see you too. I think we have one or two more people we're waiting for. The moderators will tell me. Miss Nikki will tell me. She keeps track of all of the invitations. We're waiting for 3 more people. Listen, while we're waiting, I want to make sure that you all have shared. You all have shared this with your followers. Let them know that you're doing this roundtable. Hey, Jazz. Oh, was that an accident, Jazz? I want you all to make sure that you share this with your followers. Let them know that you're here and you're doing this roundtable. Also, if people in the audience could send their daily heartbeat to the account to support the account, we appreciate the engagement. Also, TikTok loves to see us working with the audience. They don't like to see people just up here talking. So if you're in the audience, remember that we will be doing questions and answers with people in the audience, not just me asking the candidates. If you have a question for any of the candidates or me, you want to know something about the background, maybe, I don't know. You can leave your questions in the chat or you can come up. We'll have one box available for people to do the multi-guest, and you can come up and ask the candidates the question yourself. I don't have questions specific for candidates. I just have general questions. It's going to be mostly about current events because there's so much going on, but I'm also going to ask about how your campaigns are going, how the fundraising is going, and your feelings going into the midterm primaries, because some of them start March 3rd. Early voting has started in some states. I think as of next Tuesday, it will be Illinois, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Texas. As of next Tuesday, early voting will have started in those 4 states. And then the official start is March 3rd. Looks like we have one more person. Do we have one more person? Oh, there you are. Okay. Is there one more person we're waiting for? If there's one more person, you guys can just let them up while I'm talking. Again, we are having a candidates roundtable today. And I want first, before we start, I want to say that we are happy to have everybody here. If you're in the audience, please do tap the screen. We're waiting for Xavier. Okay. Please do tap the screen, get the likes up, get the shares up. There will be moderators in the audience who are going to make sure that I don't miss any questions, because sometimes the chat moves so fast, I miss things. And they might give you a little verbal spanking if you get out of line. Remember, people on the panel, please, I'm begging you, please use TikTok friendly language. Please. We love having you all here, and we want to keep everything, legal for TikTok. And some of the questions I'm going to ask you may lead to you using certain words that TikTok does not like to hear. So if you could just, be crafty in your responses, that would be wonderful. We would appreciate that. So we're here for OVC, Our Vote Counts, Political Candidate Roundtable. OVC is a nonpartisan coalition of citizens from diverse states and backgrounds, united by a shared commitment to empowering voters and promoting candidates who stand for integrity, inclusion, and accountability in the upcoming elections. Formed by a collective of educators, veterans, small business owners, students, and community advocates, Our Vote Counts represent the strength of unity across geography, race, and ideology. My name is Ayana, and I am in the great state of Ohio. Our Vote Counts is more than a name. It's a promise, a movement, and a rallying cry for democracy. Together, we are shaping the future, one informed vote at a time. And we have candidates from all around the country. And I want everybody in order from, let's say, Amanda down, and then across, and then up, back to me. to introduce yourself and what office you're running for, what state you're from. Okay, take it away, Amanda.
Hi, everyone. I am Amanda Hollowell, and I'm running for Congress in the 1st Congressional District of Georgia, and I'm in Savannah, Georgia.
I guess I would be down, huh? Would it be me?
Yes.
All right. Hello, my name is Shamal Carter, and I'm running for Arkansas House District 36, which encompasses Jonesboro, Arkansas, Bay, Arkansas, Truman, Arkansas, and Lepanto, Arkansas.
Great. I'm Dea Foy, and I'm running for the Texas U.S. 5th District House of Representatives. I'm actually in Kaufman County right now. And this is a district that's just east of Dallas, Texas.
Who is this? I can't see the name on this one, but the Ballad of JPC. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Hello, no worries. Can you hear me and see me?
Yeah, there you are. Okay.
So I wanted to wait my turn.
Oh,
Hi,
well, it's
everyone.
your turn.
My name's Joseph Perez Caputo. I'm running out of Connecticut, District 4 for Congress. I'm in a loud area in New York at the moment because I teach karate on Sundays, which is why I muted my mic. But I'm going to be listening in. I'm going to find a quiet corner to make sure I can be connected with you all. Our primary is August 11th, and I have to petition to get on the ballot. 42-day window in May to do so. I'm based out of Stamford, Connecticut.
All right, Mr. Caputo, we had you on just the other day. That's why I
Yeah,
didn't
we
recognize you, because you're so young. You're so young to us. You're so new to us. I appreciate that.
also I shaved in between, so it's
You
completely
did.
different thing.
All right, and Kendra, right?
Yes, my name is Kendra Clark. I'm currently running for the Georgia House of Representatives, District 165, and that is also in Savannah, Georgia.
All right, we got some Georgians, a Texan, candidate from Connecticut, Arkansas, and Maryland, right? Dee, you're in Texas. Texas, right? Okay. So many states, so many candidates. I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's get right to business now. Recent developments, recent reporting shows that partial federal shutdown has been triggered by clashes over funding a particular agency, the DHS, but more specifically, one component called the ICE and the CBP. The shutdown was triggered mostly by public outrage, but also by some congressional outrage over their tactics. I want to know from each of you, how should immigration enforcement be reformed to prevent future crises? And I'll start with Kendra.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone can agree that we need immigration reform, that the way we're doing things isn't working, but I think we can develop a system that is much more humane and still treats people with dignity, which is the opposite of what we're doing now. And so I think I honestly think we have to start all over. We know that ICE has only existed, for slightly over 20 years. I think we need to just knock it out and just start fresh, because this is an organization that is terrorizing our communities basically and makes us all less safe.
Okay, Joseph.
Yeah, I concur. I think reformation is best achieved by looking at what was called the INS, which was the immigration services that existed before ICE, seeing the systemic and structural failures of that, and knowing that you can't replace a broken system with another broken system. I believe the best way to reform it is to start all over. But this time, instead of doing what was done with ICE, where it was started during wartime and the racism from one group was transitioned into another group just to now then pick up both groups and be derogatory and predatory towards both groups. I believe we need a version of ICE that focuses on immigration and health. helping people come home to this country for the first time. And by having an organization that focuses more on that, more on allowing people to be a part of this community, the natural enforcement part of it will come after that. Because at the end of the day, a statistically insignificant number of immigration cases are criminals of any sort. Most of the time, it's people who are in some form or another refugees from bad policy, either their country or how our country has treated their country. So these are people who should be welcomed home to a community, who should be treated with respect and brought in with a level of support. And I don't think the current system or the system before that was ever focused on that. It was focused on ensuring a certain level of white hegemonic consistency. So that needs to be completely eradicated, that philosophy of power.
Okay, thank you. And Xavier, could you introduce yourself? Let us know what office you're running for and what state you're from, and then you can answer the prompt about reforming the ICE or immigration to prevent future crises.
And by the way, thank you to OVC for having me on. It's wonderful to be here. I actually just wrapped up knocking doors here in Iowa's 3rd congressional district. So I'm sure all the candidates here know that feeling. Just wrapping up, knocking on some doors, getting those signatures. Because I'll tell you right now, progressives or those people who are on that side of the fence, if you want to get a progressive on that ballot, you do it at the primary, not at the midterm. Make sure that you're doing that. It's so critical. But as far as ICE and CPB or CBP, these are organizations which must be dismantled. I don't like using the word abolish. And the only reason why I say that is because we should be responsible enough to be able to look at if there's anything salvageable. But if there isn't, then that's when it completely goes. If we dismantle it and we check off all the pieces and say, yeah, this is rotten, this is rotten, this is rotten, then we can actually come back and tell people legitimately, we did our due diligence, we took the responsibility, we did what others wouldn't, and said this system does not work. While I still agree with the fact that we should be able to do things to protect our borders, taking it to such extreme levels or even the moderate levels that has happened in just this last year is something inexcusable and is a sin that we all must carry for the rest of our lives, and is something we must now pay for. But we do that by doing the right thing going forward, and that is electing those people into office who are going to do something about it.
All right. Well, I think it's my turn. I have a unique view on ICE. I am very intimately familiar with Border Patrol because I lived on the border for 4 years in Texas, in Del Rio. And from what I'm observing, the Border Patrol and immigration, customs goes with Border Patrol, but immigration should be a separate department. And one of the first things I would support when I get in Congress is that Homeland Security, yes, that it is abolished because it is a new agency. I think it is a mismanagement of our federal dollars. I think that Border Patrol and Customs need to go back under the Department of Justice, and then immigration should be separated from that. And that should be more of a social service kind of department. Like Joseph said, I think immigration should be a department that's focused on acclimating people to the U.S. society and not punishing people for the way they came, providing a decent pathway. And so therefore, Customs and Border Patrol would not be involved in that. So that's how I would look at the best way to solve our current situation. And one other thing, being that I lived on the border, I was well aware Border Patrol usually does not leave more, they don't go more than 20 miles from the borders. So they have no business that far into the interior of the United States.
All right, Mr. Carter, your turn.
Yes, I thank you guys and gals for having me. So, I guess I have a unique perspective. Under previous administrations, far more people were deported, but they were deported under humane services. It was a humane means of doing so. I do believe right now the current system that they have in place with Homeland and ICE, I do feel like it's inhumane. Yes, things are not ideal. There'll never be, and we'll never satisfy everybody. I'll point that out. But I do think that we do have to have some type of enforcement. Do we abolish it altogether? No, but look at how it's been done previously. Not currently, but previously, and see how we can adjust the previous system to where it's more about, and under the Barack Obama administration, it was more not about getting people out, but it was more so about getting people legal status. Yes, you did have a high number of people who were deported, but in that, also look at the data that supports how many people once they were detained by ICE, or if they were made contact with, how many people became U.S. citizens after the fact. So, no, in a twofold answer, I don't necessarily agree with what ICE is doing, and I do agree that it do need to go back under the Department of Justice, because again, this right here is something that focused on injustice the way they're doing people. And so we got to shift our focus to what was broke but needed to be fixed versus what was broke and they made something that was completely inhumane and unjust.
Could
And
you,
Amanda?
yes, Ayana, could you repeat the question? Just because I've heard multiple answers and I think I've mixed up the question. I just want to make sure I'm answering it right.
The shutdown was driven by mostly public outrage over ICE and Border Patrol actions, essentially Americans pushing the legislative branch to defund ICE. How should immigration enforcement be reformed to prevent future crises?
Well, first, there are 4 policies or legislation that is actually in the hopper at the congressional level, written by several different representatives. One that ranged from defunding and dismantling all the way to oversight and safeguards. And I think first and foremost, while we have a lot of these special elections across the country, if we are able to capture back the House before the midterms, we should co-sponsor or sponsor or move that legislation forward in order to address this issue. I do agree with Dee. 9/11 is what brought ICE to us. And for a long time, I've talked to several past retired agents who worked in customs. Customs was customs, immigration was immigration, and, everything else landed either in the Department of Justice and so on and so forth. But you guys, we all have to be honest. We can't say it goes back to a Department of Justice that does not exist. And so, I think where we do this first is we actually approach what is the reality of our situation. The reality of our situation is we have special elections across the country. If we can grab back the House, then we should use this as a moment to pass some of that legislation that current representatives that have already presented at whatever level they are to start the stepping stones of that. I think 2, we all know the problem is in the justice system itself, which is our judicial branch is underfunded and understaffed. And so we need these folks to have immigration lawyers. We need more judges to process them. And we need to make the path to citizenship, just like the days of DACA and DAPA, more actual, attainable for folks and actually operationalize it. But I think we all have to live in reality of who is our current president, who's our administration, and what we actually can do to move forward, considering the reality of our situation. And so, yes, though I agree with everyone, I do want to have just more of a reality-based conversation about how we can go about this reform under the current can we say tyrant? I'm sorry, my bad. Under the current administration that we're faced with right now.
And I agree with you because full disclosure, I work for the executive branch of the federal government. And so I've worked under Biden and Obama and Junior Bush and Trump. And you have one president who comes in, who brings in big reforms, who adds more judges and more lawyers to help get more people adjudicated as quickly as possible. And then you have another one who comes in and says, no, we're just going to deport everybody. So we don't need more judges or more lawyers. and we're just going to shutter this thing off here and this thing off here. And so at the legislative level, you're trying to make reforms. You're providing more funds for these agencies to get more work done. And then president comes in and says, scrap all of that. We don't care. We don't want these people here. We want them gone. And so when people say, we just need more of this, or we should just abolish this, and then you start to see where these crises these standoffs rather are created, that ends up in the government being shut down because there's a lack of funding. Now we are on our third shutdown in less than a year, right? 2 partial and 1 full, and the full one was 43 days, something like that. And it hurt a lot of people, myself included. It was a very trying time for a lot of Americans, not just people who work for the federal government, but people who receive benefits from the federal government. So I would like to know from all of you, what's your plan to ensure essential services remain stable during these standoffs? Because they're going to happen again, unfortunately. And I'll start with Kendra. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what I would love to see in the future, there's what we can do today and what we can do tomorrow. I would love to see legislation where, like, if we can't come to an agreement, like, the current funding just continues. That way, the people of our communities aren't the people who suffer because of these political battles. I mean, what we've seen locally is we've seen a lot of, I'm part of a group that does a lot of mutual aid work here in Savannah, and seeing the communities really come together and being able to fill in those gaps, but they shouldn't have to. Our government should continue serving those people. So I would love to see something where we just change our process altogether so families don't end up just on the line as we battle these things out. That's something at the federal level, not the state level. Here in Georgia, our state legislature has to pass a balanced budget. There's no gaps or shutdowns at the state level, at least in our current system. But I'd love to see that where, like I said, the American people weren't the people who suffered because of that.
Joseph?
Hello. Would you mind repeating the call of the question just so I can be as specific as possible? Because I don't want my answer to just mirror hers. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I want to add to it. But now I've kind of fallen in love with your answer, so I just want to hear the question.
What's your plan to ensure essential services remain stable during political standoffs?
I think a big part of it isn't just mutual aid and community organizing on the state level for when federal administrations fail. That is a massive part of it. But a big part of it has to be messaging. Right now, this entire country has become so divided because, frankly, certain political ideologies are better at organizing than others. And it becomes a blame game. And because they can out-organize and out-maneuver, it actually means that they're more well-funded, they're more on message, and their communities are ready to defend their quote-unquote idea, which means that reality gets distorted when these things go awry. I've been posting a lot lately and hearing very consistent, silly feedback about who's at fault when I'm frankly telling people what's going on. And if we don't fight back against that level of propaganda on a local level, if we allow these multi-billion-dollar media companies to continue to shape a false narrative, it's going to undercut the real tangible action we're trying to deliver. So it's not just governmental, it becomes social as well. And especially with legacy media not picking up certain stories, and now there's certain friendly language we have to use on apps like this, we know that that's a huge tangible aspect of this fight. I don't have solutions for the digital era, for like TikTok and whatnot, but a big part of it is going to be going back to old school levels of community organizing and communication. And that way, when the federal government fails or the state gets too filled with ego, neighborhoods are literally looking out for each other.
Okay, Amanda?
So I think we have to have context of how these government shutdowns are happening. One, this last one, as one where I work full time, we advocated for a government shutdown in order to talk about how to stop the funding, the increased funding on ICE, sorry. And so I think more than anything, it is shutdowns are being used as a tool to slow down this current administration. If we have a full functioning operating democracy that is based on actual fairness and representation, we wouldn't have a shutdown conversation. We would actually have, budgets that are based in morality and actually reflect what people's needs are. And yet this is the tool that we're using. I know the first time around, Schumer and those folks in leadership did not like using this as a tool, but learned quickly that it was the tool that we needed to do. Now we also have to understand that certain things are funded beyond a shutdown. So SNAP is now funded till September 30th. They made sure to fund all veteran and services. Medicaid was never going to get touched, or Medicare, because those are in a different bucket and automatically serviced. It's our parks department. It is parts of our military branches. It is also some other government functionings as far as like the business development piece and so on and so forth, getting businesses licensed. And, even our tax department is going to slow down, our IRS, but that was going to slow down regardless because they fired half the agents at the beginning of this term of this presidency. And so I say all that to say, we have to decide what we're willing to risk in order to protect the last piece of this democracy that we have. And I just think we messed up on the messaging. The government shutdown wasn't to use to hurt people. It was because we were trying to say there is something that this government is operating in a way that they're operating, and we do not agree with it. And we will sacrifice certain services that the federal government provides in order to have our point reached, to make sure these lawmakers understand that they need to be providing budgets that make sense, not increasing budgets. I mean, ICE is funded for at least 20 years already from its initial funding line. And it doesn't need any increase in funding, which was what they were trying to go for this last round of budget reconciliation. And so I think more so than anything, we have to understand our tools of resistance in this moment. The shutdown was a tool of resistance. A lot of folks in my community and in my spaces were calling for it. And now we also have to understand, I think we just have to do a better way of educating and messaging folks that we're using this as a tool versus the traditional government gridlock that we've seen past in past administrations in past years.
So, I agree with all of you, but I'm not hearing anybody saying how, for instance, federal employees should be protected. Right now, TSA is working without pay. TSA, the people who check the bags at the airport and make sure there's nothing crazy getting through, I'm going to push back on you a little bit, Amanda. I think sacrificing their pay is something that is a bridge too far. Like, we need those people to be paid so they can be fully functioning when they go into work. They do very important work. We all do. But the safety of airline passengers and airplanes is not something I think we should be willing to sacrifice, which is why I think at the legislative level, there should be something put in place so that people continue to get paid during these shutdowns. If it's going to be shut down every 30 days, every 40 days, and people have to keep figuring things out, people are just going to quit.
But also, let's be honest, they figured out how to fund SNAP the last time around. They chose not to fund TSA.
Yeah.
Again, a choice was made.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
We just have to have lay it all the way out there. Like, folks are making choices of how they want to fund things. And the only reason why I personally believe that SNAP was funded was because there was a national crisis of hunger happening in real time. And they saw the pictures and they saw the people. We should have figured out how to get TSA back to fully staffed after those first 3 accidents and people were dying and folks were being injured. But yet here they are again, and they're okay with saying, but okay, it's okay for them also not to work, right? And so it's the transportation system as a whole that's being impacted. And so, yes, I agree with you. I do not appreciate watching folks, have to sacrifice their livelihood and figure out what is going to be next for them. But I also understand choices are being made, and maybe it's our leadership who's being short-sighted about what they should be fighting for in this moment.
Okay. And Mr. Carter, let me just add something to this, Mr. Carter. And Amanda mentioned this. ICE has billions and billions. ICE itself could fund DHS right now. Mm-hmm. And like she said, choices are being made. What do you see as Congress's responsibility in slowing down the train and saying, hey, maybe we're just throwing money at a problem instead of fixing it, and we need to focus on fixing it? What do you what is the fix? What is the fix for this, Mr. Carter?
Bipartisan effort of automatic continuation appropriations. Those are statutes that would force, if you can't reach a common ground to fund the next fiscal year, that would automatically put the previous year's budget in place until there was a common ground met in order to continue the government. Shutdowns are simply political. It's honestly just a political game to kind of force the other person's hand. I believe, again, bipartisan legislation, like I said, some type of continuing resolution or an automatic continuations appropriation, which can be a statute. I'm big on policy. I'm big on transparency. And so in the reality of it, if we can't reach common ground now, whether it was a Democrat or a Republican in office, we can at least go with what Congress previously appropriated in order to get us through, because obviously that budget, it worked out previously. And so we can actually carry that statue over until the fighting at the Capitol kind of ceases, and there becomes a common ground. That's the biggest thing. We can talk about what we should do all day long, but if there's no policy to support what we're doing, we're just talking. So finding a common ground with people on both sides of the aisle to say, you know what, I understand that you don't agree with we should put this much money in ICE. Excuse me, and I understand you feel like we shouldn't put this much money in the War Department. But how about we reach a common ground and say, let's do some reviews, let's get some studies. But while we're trying to get data and information, let's pass some type of statute or some type of resolution to keep our previous funding, and then we can, in that statute, make it where we can put an amendment in there so that we can shift the focus once we come to a budget that we agree on.
Okay, Miss D.
Yes, I hear Carter. I think that is probably a really good option. And I'm going to say right quick to him before I answer the question even more quickly, I hope, is that I think some departments come to budgeting discussion to discuss a little bit about, how they've been operating. So to give them the same amount, I'm not sure that would work. If they're doing more programs, they may need more money. If they're not doing stuff or not passing audits. So I understand that, and I think that's a great option. Now, in my platform, I suggest two things that would probably be worked on through the Rules Committee. Number one, if there happens to be a shutdown, as an incentive to the Congress people, their budgets go first. Their salaries, their office budgets, those are the first things that will be put on hold. And then the second thing is nobody leaves the Capitol, okay? You might get to go home to sleep for 8 hours, but everybody has to come back to the Capitol during a shutdown. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think there may have been 2 recesses through that 43 days of shutdown. So those are 2 big things that I would do to incentivize Congress people to get that budget fixed and done. And as a grassroots campaign, yes, essential employees will always get paid first. That would include definitely our airports, our active duty military, anybody who has to be there, any of our first responding departments, they would never, ever get shut down over definitely Congress people's salaries, their budgets, and them getting to leave for recess.
Okay, and Mr. Xavier.
I think the first and foremost solution should be Hypnotoad. Hypnotoad would make everything better. It's a poor Futurama reference, but for those of you who get it, I'm sure it's a nice giggle.
I'm like, is that some kind of psychedelic mushroom?
That's right. So, no, you made the comment earlier, Ayana, that I think is so critical. And for me, it's always the first thought in my mind is what's going to happen to the workers when these things occur, because there's nothing more heartbreaking than those people who don't actually get a say in the decision are the ones who are suffering the most. And what I think first must be done is we have to put something in place that's very similar to the unions, where we have a funding that's put down not to necessarily pay the workers during that time, but to fund their housing during that downtime, to make sure their bills get paid, make sure they have food on the table while the government is going through their petty BS, right? It's one of those things where, unfortunately, people with power are using the rest of us as pawns, and we need to have safeguards in place that protect the working class and protect the workers on Capitol Hill and every other part of our government. But at the same time, when it comes down to brass tacks, we are all going to have to suffer at some point when we are in dire moments like the moments that we are right now. It is not an easy decision to make in a position of power to tell everyone else, hey, we're going to have to go without in order to get these people to listen. But that's something that should unify us as we are watching people in Minnesota with no choice, watching as they have these thugs coming in and taking over their community, crippling their economy. They don't have a choice. But the thing is, I was up there 2 weekends ago. I took an entire week. I took my birthday weekend to go march with those people down in Minneapolis, to stand at the Whipple building, to sit there and be witness to what's going on, and to stand next to them, to lock arms, to join in unity. And what that means is you are put in a hopeless, helpless situation, but you find a way, and that's with the community. So when the government does shut down, it's also about the community coming together and looking out for those people who may lose their jobs during that time. But ultimately, we should be more responsible as those people who want to be in elected positions to have a safeguard in place that when we need to play these games, we have a way to protect those people who do make the government function. And something I like to tell people is COVID-19, it was a horrible situation we all had to endure, but it
Say
should have taught us one of the
C19,
most
Mr.
valuable lessons.
Mr. Corrigan. C19.
Oh, sorry. C19. Got it. I don't have my list with me. But what C19 should have taught us, or the biggest lesson I took from it, is this country does not work without the working class. It will collapse without the working class. And so we need to be doing more to make sure those people are protected during times that we have to put on this kind of political pressure. And it also means that we have to come together as communities to get through these moments together, stand united, stay vigilant. And everyone else's answers, I love what you got going on, but at the same time, sometimes tough love is what we all have to get through, but we do it together.
Okay.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
Like Kendra, because Kendra and I are in a very unique space in Georgia. We have a $14 billion surplus. We can easily fund our gap. But we have governors, there are states who can fund these gaps. And it depends on who their leadership is. And that responsibility also goes back to the state to have a moral conscience when you know, especially if you know, like in PG County in Maryland, when you have states that have high federal workers, in those states, you also have some sort of responsibility to those folks too, especially if you have the budget.
I agree. I totally agree. Unfortunately, I am in Ohio, and the governor does not agree with that. He has no moral. I'm sorry. This isn't about me. I apologize. Okay. Moving on to something that affects 100% of us: voting. Voting. Ah, yes. Election officials are preparing for possible interference and voter intimidate. You know what? I'm going to have to be very careful about this because TikTok does not like it when we talk about certain topics revolving around voting. So let's just say that the states are gearing up with some roaches to invade how they do their elections. And the federal government and the House of Representatives passed a piece of legislation called the SAVE Act. And there's been a lot of discussion online about what that means. A lot of people have no idea. I know that it amounts to an unconstitutional poll tax, but there are people who think, well, if I just carry my passport with me, I'll be fine. How? What I want to hear from you guys. What safeguards should be in place to protect voters? I don't know why we think we have to protect voters. It's not, they're not going into a battlefield, right? Some places you vote, you're the only person in the room with the people who are working the polls. It's not unsafe. It's not being threatened at all that I know of. I've worked the polls a few times, and let me tell you, if you can get through to illegally vote, it's because you are an anomaly, not because you are the standard. So, Kendra, Let me know what safeguards do you think need to be in place, or is everything fine, or do you think the SAVE Act will save voters?
So the SAVE Act will absolutely not save voters, because basically, especially like as a woman who has been married and gotten divorced and changed her last name, it's a lot of work to do all that and get all that paperwork. And I have a passport, but for a lot of people, that's not an option, for a multitude of reasons. In one of my previous jobs, I worked with individuals that were on parole and probation, and that was one of the barriers they had even to getting a job, because in order to get an ID, you need your birth certificate, you need your social security number. Well, if you've been locked up for 10 years, you probably don't have those documents. So it's not just getting this one thing, it's getting all of these little pieces of paper that can be really challenging and really expensive. And we know that this will specifically target either people who are low income, who don't have access to those things, or also women whose names change. So this is really just treating people as different classes based upon their status, based upon their gender, based upon their income. So this is a terrible idea. Things our state could do to make that better if this does pass. I do imagine there will probably be some legal challenges in the court if it does. But our state could make it easier to get an ID. They could make it cheaper and easier to get your birth certificate. There are a lot of ways our state could do that. Our current state legislature probably won't. They're actually trying to make voting even harder. One of the bills we have here in Georgia is to take away our current voting system to go back to paper ballots and like hand marking. Even though, yeah.
That's what we do in Ohio. I hate it. I hate it.
Well, we had I heard someone from the Board of Elections at the state level come and talk, and they were talking about how they compared the electronic ballots and the little reader compared to the paper ballots. And what they found is the reader for the paper ballots saw significantly more errors than the digital. And so we're really just going backwards and making it harder for people to vote. But the SAVE Act is just going to make that even more difficult. And we shouldn't do it.
Okay. Joseph?
There are, I believe, 3 very specific things we can and should do, because we can't necessarily rely on the Senate to turn down what the House of Representatives has just passed.
Joseph, you're a little quiet. Is there a way you can...
Sorry, can you hear me now?
I think maybe if you get closer to the phone, the microphone.
Sure. Let me see if I can take the earphones out, if that'll help. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, a little bit better. Oh no, now you're gone. Where did you go, Joseph? Oh no, no, he's muted. Amanda, while we wait for Joseph, do you have any thoughts on the SAVE Act and poll taxes and voting? And it's a mess.
I mean, it's a mess, but it's also like way to, cut your nose off in spite of your face. Because they have a large number of voters who are married, and have changed names and names that are not on the same birth certificate. I think this goes back into that whole lie that there's illegal immigrants voting. There's this whole thing, and they're trying to push this issue. But really what they're going to do is they're going to disenfranchise not just one particular women that they think, but they're going to disenfranchise all women, all folks who have name changes within the process of their lives. And so, I mean, I think I want to see the motivation sometimes, which is is this their way of saying they don't want women to vote and they don't know how to how to go around it? And so this is the way they figured out how to disenfranchise
I've heard
women from voting. You know what I mean? And so I look at it that way. I hear rumors from DC that it could pass this week, that they might have Susan Collins in the Senate on the ropes. And, that's her whole anyways. But I don't understand. I don't understand the motivation to hurt your voting block that much. But I don't know if they're trying to target Black women because that's that consistent voters block, but you're going to hurt all women who participate the most. And then you're going to have this very skewed sect of leftover men voting that actually might not go your way. Right. And so I just think it's short-sighted. It's a little ridiculous. And, I hope it doesn't pass, but I know there's several lawsuits already lined up against it. And so it probably will not be enacted by the midterms, but they'll probably keep trying to push it.
Well, in the federal government, there's always this talk about fraud, waste, abuse, and one of the rumors, which is just delusion and silliness, is that there are millions of people voting who are not legal to vote. And so if we pass the SAVE Act and make sure people were actually born in the U.S. and they have a U.S. passport, that those are the only ones who are voting. And we need that legislation to do that. When states already have in place, they've already verified your citizenship when they registered you to vote. This just creates another layer of bureaucracy that pisses people off. This is something that might keep people from voting altogether, not because they don't have the documents, but because they don't feel like jumping through more hoops. I don't want to jump through any more hoops. I just want to vote. Mr. Carter, what do you think?
Listen, I'll just be completely honest with you. It is to disenfranchise a people, more so women, regardless of their race. If you go back to the Voting Rights Act, I think it's 1964-ish.
1965, yeah.
You go back to that, again, look at the focus of it. Only middle-aged and older Caucasians were able to decide the fate of the people in America. So again, I don't think it's geared toward just a race itself. I think it's geared toward disenfranchising POC as well as women in general. Personally, the only way you can really safeguard situations like this, again, bipartisan efforts. And I know you've heard me say it several times, but what about looking into, and I know a lot of people, and I work a lot with the student population, and it was asked a question. I asked them, I said, why is it so hard for you to register to vote when you graduate high school? Well, I don't want to have to do jury duty. I said, huh? That makes no sense. But realistically, the way I express it is, why is it not that when they turn 18, there's a system that automatically registers you. So in that registration, it gives you an opportunity to have a voice in our democracy. When I was a kid, let me tell you, I was getting ready for college. I was getting ready to leave home. I wasn't worried about voting because that's not something that was bred in my DNA, because my family originally comes from Mississippi. They growing up, they believed in holding their head down when they passed somebody of a different race because they felt they were inferior. So voting is not something that they pushed on us growing up. So I think, again, education is the key, and is the key to safeguarding this right here. Women's rights, I am a huge supporter of. So I'm the father of 4 girls. I have 1 granddaughter. And I definitely feel like it is very important that not we just safeguard it, but think about it. I want my daughters to get married one day. I want my grandbaby to get married. You mean to tell me because you choose not to live the American way, you have no voice in the democracy or what happens to our people in our communities? So no, hey, automatic registration once you graduate high school or once you turn 18, and then also going into, again, education within the school system, and not saying it's all about politics, because it's all about democracy in reality.
Okay, Miss D.
Yes, thanks again, Carter, for that, because I never thought of response that I'm not going to register to vote because I don't want to be called for jury duty. So I'll be prepared for that one. Thank you. But I'm a deputy register here in my county, and I'll be getting my deputy register in Dallas County next week. But my goal is to help educate the community. The SAVE Act, which is an act that's being sponsored by a gentleman in my state, unfortunately, is primarily about getting registered to vote. And so I will be working with targeted communities to help them get registered. I've already talked to our elections commission in our county, And I've talked to them about this. So what do we do when we have these complications? And what they're informing me is if you have a citizen that can't find ID and they don't want to pay for something, please have them talk to us. Let's see what we can do. I'm not sure that's going to be the end all, but the one thing that I want especially the people who will be petitioning to get me on the ballot, our targeted communities, I'm trying to get them their voter registration card before it's time to go to the polls. So, and make sure they have a valid ID, because that's what it takes in Texas. You have that voter registration card and an ID, you should be good as gold. Because yes, Ayana, I have a certain kind of concern that there may be people asking to intimidate, but I'm trying to get people to feel confident. If you're registered properly, if we have to go to the Department of Elections Commission, get you straight, let's get that done 30 days before, early voting. And I'm pressing that as hard as I can because I want everybody to feel confident. And also, somebody needs to question, Chip, not just birthers or people who's born in the United States get to vote. Naturalized citizens, and there's other categories, can vote in certain elections. So I think it's not as easy as it should be because it's a civic responsibility that we all should participate in. But I think it's going to be an opportunity for us to show our patriotism in making sure we get our documentation in so we can get our cards and our IDs match, and we can get there and decide who we want in leadership this time.
Okay, thank you. Xavier?
Ayana, this war on Christmas has got to end.
What? What do you mean?
I mean that this war on Christmas, well, in all reality, that's what I hear when I hear this discussion for a SAVE Act. What is actually happening there? The instances of voter fraud across the nation has been proven to be a microscopic issue. This isn't something that is going on a level that we need to be doing such atrocious things as stripping people of the rights to vote simply because they don't have the correct form of ID. Although, and this is where with Carter and others, I specifically agree that you turned 18. Other countries have figured this out. You're automatically registered to vote. You're already a citizen of the country. Just let's get past this petty BS that certain people want to constantly push forward, because the reality is we know what it's really about. We know what it's really about, and that is wanting to take away the voices of those people that may disagree with what they have to say. Far too often, pieces of legislation like this, attacks against people like this, are to minimize or completely eliminate their voices, whether it's women or people of color or immigrants who are coming to the country legally and have done everything right. For almost everyone in this room, not everyone per se, but almost everyone in this room, your family came here at some point and did it the right way, most likely, and they got in. Do you want your rights stripped as well? And the whole fact that this makes me so angry when I heard about it, because I am somebody who legally had his name changed for other reasons. But the loops that you have to jump through, all the women who have their names changed because of marriage, or even men who do it as well, but for anyone who goes to that legal name change, to add this additional burden, especially in the era of digital documents, there's absolutely zero reason that we have to be sitting there going like, well, how do we know you're actually Susan Smith? How do we actually know for sure? Well, follow the paper trail, dude. And you don't even have to follow the paper. It's a digital trail. Just follow the trail. It tells you exactly what's going on. So anyways, to me, this is the war on Christmas in a whole new form. It is, I don't want to say a red herring per se, but it's kind of leaning towards that. It's a scarecrow. But unfortunately, they're bringing the scarecrow to life.
And one of the reasons is because, national security. Anytime the government says, well, it's a matter of national security, people are on board. That's why we have the U.S. Patriot Act and and we have ICE and all of this. We have that, even the tariffs, right? National security, and then the legislative branch jumps on board, and then the Supreme Court is like, well, they said it was for national security, so it's okay, and that becomes the catch-all, the excuse. But Joseph, it's not good enough. People are seeing through it. What do you think?
First off, I apologize for disappearing. My phone went from 100% battery to 10, so sadly I might have to disappear after this. There are three options available that I think are legal, helpful options. The first is rare, but possible. 3/4 of the state legislatures could fight back and could determine this as something null and void to be resisted. Secondly, and this is more common, this is an unconstitutional poll tax to those who've had their names changed. And so we could file for an injunction. Now, the Supreme Court and many courts have been stacked against us, but it is an option that's available. I am the only person running for Congress nationwide who's currently in law school. I guarantee you every law professor you know is freaking out. My poor con law professor looks sickly by the day. Sweet old man. He's every day giving us ways that we could and should fight back. Congress is not powerless here, even though a lot of our checks and balances have been destroyed. Neither are the state governments, and neither are the courts. So we could file for an injunction for an unconstitutional poll tax, or we could get the state legislatures to somewhat legally rebel through a 3/4 vote in that nature. The third thing we have to remember is that polling places typically are at libraries or schools. So we can invoke the realization that this is public property, this is public safety, and we could, if anything, fight back by saying, listen, we're going to deploy the National Guard to these polling places ahead of schedule because we are afraid of statistically dangerous federal forces coming in and ensuring that the right people vote. Now, I don't like the idea. That's not my first choice. My first choice would be to go through the other roads. But at the end of the day, when ICE is acting as an occupying force and when the federal government is essentially trying to trigger a certain violent response, we need to let them know, listen, you're just not welcome in our schools. And we're not going to let you in the building. And once voters cross that threshold, they're going to be safe. We're always going to have more windows and we're always going to have more trees. And at the end of the day, a federal government needs to understand that they can't just come up to local communities threatening violence and threatening elections without legal reprimand. And unfortunately, I do believe that they want that. I do believe that they want more news press and they want violence. So we need to find ways to make it very, very apparent to them that we're trying to avoid it. Those are the three things I'd recommend. And as my last note, my name's Joseph Perez Caputo, but I was born Joseph Caputo. Perez is my father's name. Lies. I was born Joseph Perez, and then my name changed to Joseph Caputo. And I'm running as Joseph Perez Caputo because that's what I've been going by since before my father died. But I haven't legally changed my name yet. So even though I'm running in this election, I also might not be able to vote in this election because I have my own naming issues. So this is something that's going to affect a ton of Americans nationwide, and Americans are not angry enough. So there are legal ways we could go about it through the state legislatures, through the governors with the deployment of the National Guard, just as a deterrent, and through a federal injunction, which I think a constitutional injunction would be the best way. It might only buy us time, but sometimes that's all we need. Even if a court just says, hey, you can't decide this till after the midterms, that's a massive victory. A little long-winded, and I'm down to 2%, but I love you all, and I will join from my laptop next time.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. And think about it. We just made people, the federal government just made people jump through hoops to get that enhanced ID. I don't know if any of you had to stand in a long line to be able to get that ID that apparently you can only use in a few states as proof of citizenship, right? So even if you have this ID that costs extra, that you had to stand in a long line to get, it still might not be enough. I joked with somebody and I said, pretty soon they're going to ask for a notarized CD-ROM copy of video of your birth from the hospital. It's insane. It is insane. And it's all in just trying to keep people from voting. I saw a video yesterday, and we've talked about this on our panel with a few candidates, of some college students in North Carolina walking a mile or so to their voting station, to their poll, because their poll at their university was closed by the state. The state said, we're not using colleges and universities as polling stations anymore. And so now either the DNC is going to provide transportation, or you're going to have to walk. Some people walk everywhere. They don't have cars, and there might not be a bus that goes wherever these kids are. And so it's going to become harder for people to vote. And that's going to affect everyone on this panel, but also people in the audience. I mean, I love to work the polls, but I also sometimes absentee vote. We have vote by mail here in Ohio, and I sometimes like to get dressed up and go to the polls. I like doing it how I want to do it. And if the state suddenly came in and said, well, now you have to do it this way, and you can only do it this way, and that's what they've done. You have to have your ballot postmarked a week before the election, but now the postmark rules have changed for the USPS, and forget it. Just forget it. I'm not voting. I can see people saying, I'm just not going to do it. But how are you, when you all are out on the trail and you're talking to people, how are you encouraging them to vote? Are you encouraging them to go early, or are you hearing from them that I'm not doing it, I can't be bothered, I don't have time, it's too difficult? What are you all hearing? What's going on? Go ahead, Kendra.
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest thing I'm encouraging people, one, to even check their voter registration. Georgia did a large purge this past year that took thousands of voters off the registration logs, and so one, just encouraging people to make sure they're still registered. I know when we're canvassing, we're going to be actually taking out like the form to register to vote for people if their registration has lapsed, if they have someone in their household who's not registered. We want to make the process as easy as possible for them. But I think the biggest thing is there are all these hurdles, but there's also voter apathy. There are people who, even with all these hurdles, they're like, why should I vote? Because I keep on doing this and y'all keep giving me the same thing. Nothing is changing and everything just keeps getting harder. And so, I think that part of this is like having real conversations with people when we're in their home, talking about things we can actually do to affect and better their life and give them something to vote for, not just something to vote against. Because, you have to give people something to hope for. And I think that is really important as we're fighting against this current administration, but also just even prior to this administration, voter apathy was already existing. And so we have to get people excited about voting by pushing for policies that will actively affect their everyday life and make it better. I heard someone recently say that we need more elected officials who are trying to do unreasonable things, because while what may seem unreasonable today may be the policy of the future. In the past, it was unreasonable for Black people to have the same rights as white people. It was unreasonable for women to be able to vote. It was unreasonable for, children not to work in factories. But yet we made those things happen, and we can still make those things happen. We can still make big things happen, and we have to keep fighting for them and give people hope that those things can happen.
All right. I like that answer. Amanda, what do you think?
I mean, I agree with, Kendra, and I just feel like, we have to meet the moment of where folks are. And I think voter apathy is real, but also voter confusion is even more palatable. Folks were confused, right, about where to go, what to do. And then when they were showing up to the ballot, they didn't know what they were reading. And I think we all have to take a time to do some deep voter education beforehand, because when you show up, all of a sudden there's this constitutional amendment. I didn't know that was going to be on the ballot, and it's in legalese, and I don't understand this. And so I just think, we as candidates, but as well as our campaigns and our parties and so on and so forth, need to do a better job at really digging into the part of GOT that is the education piece. and centering that. It's not just voter registration and turn out the vote. It's also voter registration, voter education. And then we talk about how you're going to show up and what are the barriers for folks to show up. And so, I think we do a horrible job at that. And I think that should be something that we're pouring dollars into, and folks should really take the time to do that. You got to sit a while and have those conversations at the door that I've been having, and hear people's fears and also correct them. Folks show up to some of my meet and greets with very specific questions and complaints about education. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. This is what I can do in Congress, but this is what your state needs to do for you. And this is what your local and your county needs to do for you, right? And so even taking that time empowers folks to say, oh, got it. So I should actually show up more at school boards for this thing that I feel is a pain point versus me writing you over and over again. And I'm like, yes, because I don't want you to write and feel like you're not being heard, because reality is, you actually need to be writing your school board. But if you're doing good constituent services at whatever level of government you're at, you're helping and directing that person to who they actually need to talk to about their pain point. And I think we don't do that. I think I have friends who are elected officials now who I'm like, do you take the time to educate folks? And they're like, I just got so much on my plate. I can only do so much, Amanda. And I'm like, yes, but do you take the time to help them to understand where your power is and where their power lies? And I wish we did that more. I think recently I was at a local district meeting, and this commissioner was so smart. He brought everyone that was responsible for something at the county level. So he brought in the police department. He brought in parks and recs. He brought in someone from, that works on the case manager, social services. And so for every question someone had, he had an answer to it. And if he didn't have an answer, those folks were like, we'll look into it. You have our, write this down. We're taking notes. We'll look into it. And that was so enlightening to me because these people felt extremely empowered and real-time answers. And we just need to think about how we govern better and be more about centering people and helping them understand the moment versus what we're doing now.
Okay, Mr. Carter, do you have any advice on how to get people to? I know they don't want jury duty. They don't want it.
So, man, I have simply used the messaging of that they're currently using now. People call it a scare tactic. I call it pulling a them on them. Depending on who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to my college kids, because I do have a university in my district, I ask them, can you guys afford to pay tuition without financial aid? And most of them, they're going to say no. And then I give them the harshness. Hey, do you know by abolishing the Department of Education, putting the rights of that in the hands of the people within the states, I said it really diminishes the opportunity for you to receive that said money that's rightfully yours. The messaging is different for each room I'm in, but also leading back to not trying to scare them, but giving them tough and real love. That's the biggest thing. Helping them understand, if you do not vote, this is what could happen. If you do not this is what could happen. If you don't, I give them an option, because once I give you an option, and then realistically, when I'm elected, you come to me and you say, Mr. Carter, this is going on. And then I ask you, well, I understand, but we did talk about this while I was campaigning. And you do understand that I'm not the majority, that I'm only the voice of one district. I am standing up for my district, but at the same time, did you vote? That's and again, well, no, I didn't vote because my vote didn't matter, but it does. Realistically, we have been misled because people talk about the electoral college and they talk about the presidential election, but in reality, someone said it. I think it was Amanda, talking about the different levels of government and understanding their function. Understanding that when it comes to the roads, when it comes to education, when it comes to human services, understand there are different levels when it to how we can address these things. So understanding your audience, registering younger people to vote. That is something that you guys do have to understand. We have a generation of people who are coming up who are, when it comes to their cognitive understanding, they don't understand the importance of their democratic right to voice how things can be changed. So it is very, very vital that we educate them on how this is affecting them not short term but long term. My grandbaby is 7 months old, and realistically, we didn't know that we needed Roe versus Wade back in when it happened. But look at now. My youngest daughter is 12, and we have to make sure that in 20 years they have complete control of what happens with their body, what decisions that they can make. So educating the room of people that you're in and catering specifically to them, giving them, watch this. I didn't pay attention when I was in 7th grade and I took government. You know why? Because I was in 7th grade. Civics. Like nobody took that time. But when you shift your mindset to understand that our generation coming behind us, they don't know. And instead of assuming they know, taking the time to give them what they need, telling them this is why you have to go to the polls. This is why, because if not, you have somebody that don't look like you, that's never been in a position, that's never been in poverty, that never understand the concept of what a woman needs, making decisions for women and people in poverty.
And you know what? I have a 17-year-old daughter, soon to be 18 in a couple of weeks. And I'm talking about politics and government all the time. I work for the government. She's taking, AP American government. So she knows. But if you ask her, what's the importance of voting? What's the legislative level do? What does the executive level do? She blanks out. Why? Because she's thinking about prom. She's thinking about graduation. She's thinking about what college she wants to go to. She works part-time. She's got a mountain of homework. She's not thinking about any of that stuff. And seriously, I asked her this question the other day. She was like, Mommy, I don't know what I would vote for. If I had to vote, I don't know. And I don't want to tell her what to vote for, but I do think the schools could do a better job of educating children on the importance of voting. Even if you don't know, you do know that you have to vote. You have to. And then all of the other stuff comes later, like what to vote for at the local level and the state level and the federal level.
So can I add to what you were just saying?
Sure.
So on the other side of it, there's one thing that I disagree with. You said I don't want to tell her what to vote for. Realistically, they don't know yet the importance of taxation without representation. They don't know, so they don't understand. So if the way I raise my children, I raise them on certain morals and values that most of the time lines up, if they don't have political views, lines up with what I see. Now, realistically, we have some of these younger people who are very liberal or who voice their opinion in a different manner. But I feel like guidance, that's just like religion. You don't just, tell them, here's the Bible, you understand it, or here's the Quran, you understand it. You actually have to give them guidance. You have to tell them right from wrong. In the Bible, it tells us not being able to determine right from wrong. There's an age for that. Well, when it comes to voting, it's no different. Not being able to understand what representation that I need because I don't understand what the different positions do. I feel like we should be able to at least guide them. Now, if they don't agree with the guidance that we give, have that conversation with them. But at least try to guide them. Don't tell them, okay, you're going to do this, but try to guide them in the way. And if that doesn't work and they vote a different way, then that's what they wanted. Realistically, but we have to be realistic. We can't just tell them you need to vote and leave it there. The education has to be above standard, especially for POC, especially for women. The standard has to be above the average because as a man, yes, they're trying to disenfranchise a culture of people, but at the same time, they're coming for women as well. Not just black women, not just white women, not just Latino women as a whole. So we have to educate our daughters, our granddaughters, our nieces. We have to give them an opportunity because we're taking that opportunity away. We're depriving them of that by not telling them how this is what happened. These are the consequences. This is the reaction of this is the consequence of the action that you're giving at this moment.
Okay, I like that response. Thank you. Dee.
Yes, ma'am. There are two things that I'm finding in my community as I get out and I start this campaigning thing. One of them is I wanted to make sure that the high school students who are, I think it's 17 years and 10 months, get registered. So they were prepared for the elections. And one thing that I found out is that every principal in the state of Texas is a deputy register. So only thing I have to do now, besides I am going to do some events at some high schools, but I need to let the students know their principals can get them registered to vote. So that was a really good one that I found out. The second thing is Kaufman County, if not the fastest growing in the nation today, a couple of years ago, it was the fastest growing county in the nation. A lot of people here, their driver's license doesn't match where they previously lived like a couple of years ago. I mean, people have just been moving into the county a lot. You know, we've got housing going up. And so the other thing with the state of Texas, I don't know about other states, when you go change your driver's license to your new address, you can automatically get registered to vote. And I'm telling my neighbors and the people in my county and in my district, if you need to go update your driver's license, go ahead and check that box, or I think it's a box when you do the application, or they'll ask you. Go ahead and get registered to vote at the same time. You're knocking out two birds in one stone, and you don't have to go through a separate process. So those are two of the big things I've learned just recently, in my campaign.
Okay, and Xavier, did you hear the question, Xavier?
Location, so I lost the audio briefly, but I was able to hear some of the other responses.
What methods are you employing to get people excited about voting, registered to vote, et cetera, et cetera? Are you talking to them about voting? What is the response you're getting?
A lot of what I do when it comes to getting people excited about voting is giving them something that they typically aren't used to, and that is the campaign that I'm running. I don't want to sound cheesy about it, but a lot of people aren't used to those people who will literally say, I'll fall on the sword to do what's right, to do what I believe in, and not just put this in as some type of career where I'm trying to save my booty with every decision I make. I'm not here to save my booty. I'm here to make those changes that have to happen for everyone in the working class. And I always go back to that messaging. But when I talk to people like today, door knocking, of course, did I run into people who had negative things to say? Absolutely. And two of them, I got to change their mind because I told them what I'm running on. I told them what I'm doing. And they were just like, wait a second, you actually want to dismantle certain things and try to rebuild it? And I'm like, yes. If we keep offering people the same things that they've been used to for year after year or decade after decade, they're going to become disenfranchised. I mean, I had become disenfranchised for a short time, and then I finally got myself out of that funk and got myself back in gear. But we have to give people a reason to show up and vote. So if we do what we've always done, we'll get what we've always gotten. And so it's so critical to tell people, hey, I'm not the status quo, but even more importantly, if you want the actual choice later on, you got to show up in the primaries. You got to help people get on the ballot that give you that option. So as far as like giving people motivation to vote overall, what I'll say is this, and it's not a quick fix, is we have to make voting something that is doable. I know that wasn't specifically the question, but every time this kind of thing comes around, my phrasing or the things that I try to explain to people is we have to make it a public holiday. We have to move it to a day that's more feasible during the week, whatever it takes to actually make people want to engage in voting. That's what's going to make the biggest difference, but that's a more long-term solution. So as far as motivating them, you give them something different, something that's actually going to say, hey, you know what? This time, maybe things could be different, but it's going to take effort more than just in the general. It has to happen in the primary as well.
Speaking about giving people something to vote for, housing policy remains a major vulnerability in national leadership and state leadership. What goodies do you think you all should be talking up in your campaign besides, I'm going to do things differently from whoever is in office? What's the most urgent housing challenge that you feel right now, or the most pressing kitchen table issue that you see as being affecting Americans that you can address in your campaign? Go ahead, Kendra.
Yeah, housing is definitely one of the biggest topics that comes up because we've seen housing become so unaffordable over the last 4 years in particular, ever since C-19 happened. And there are a lot of things that can be done at a lot of different levels. The federal government, I would love them to see put more money into actual public housing. So here in Savannah, we have Yamakra Village, which is one of the oldest public housing units in the town that they're in the process of demolishing. We've been working closely with the Yamakra Residents Council to help make sure as that happens that they have legally binding agreements to make sure that they have relocation assistance, that they have a right to return if they're still eligible for that housing, but also in writing that they're actually going to rebuild deeply affordable housing when it gets rebuilt. Because we know that is something that's really needed in this area. And so looking at more funding from the federal government, I think would be great. Here at the state level, which is what I'm running for, there's a handful of things. One, we need to update zoning laws, which is like the most boring thing answer, but
that's
truly,
that's important.
Making it where you can build different size housing. Because the way we lived 50 years ago is not the way we live today. But also a zoning where you can make communities that are walkable. Like I heard someone say, they're like, who's going to get me the closest to, I think it's Barcelona's like super squares. And basically they like reformulated their zoning so you could have grocery stores and other things in a neighborhood. So you have like little communities where you can get the things you need. But also, at also the state level, we have a state law that prohibits our local municipalities from putting into place any kind of rent control. So allowing those municipalities to make the decisions that are best for their locations, because what works for Savannah might not work for, Ludowici, which might not work for Atlanta. So letting those local governments make the decisions that work best for their constituents. And then also preventing all these private equity firms from buying up homes. I think in Atlanta, like 40% of family homes are currently owned by private equity firms.
Oh, wow.
And we're seeing a lot of that move towards Savannah as well. I work in probate, so dealing with people's estates. And, we have these people who call and they're offering these people cash money and a lot of it to buy up their home. But then they are jacking up the price. They're jacking up the rent and making things even more expensive. But also, if it's a corporation that's owning that home rather than an individual, once again with probate, that's something that can't be passed down because corporations don't die. And so there's a lot of solutions we can do. We just have to have a legislature that is willing to do those things.
Okay, thank you. Amanda?
So I'll speak from the federal level, also living in Georgia. Affordability needs to be defined by what is actually the pain point within that community as well. I think for Georgia, affordability in housing is a workforce development issue. And so when we get out of Savannah and we talk about places like a Brunswick on the coast, or when we go inland and there are federal government jobs or we'll call it transient jobs within those areas where people come in from out of state and set up shop to hire local labor, that local labor can't afford to live or work in that space, right? And so I think about things about like workforce housing tax credits, especially around job centers. And so if folks are coming in to build the next plant or to create the next federal job training facility, we should offer workforce housing tax credits within that community, because those people that they're bringing in are higher income earners, which put up rent prices and around there, especially in short-term vacation rentals. I also think about renters who, want to have the American dream of eventually moving into a home, and more than likely they can't come up with the down payment. And I think about renters tax credits and creating a first-time home buyers program where you can get renters tax credits for the first year, so that can be supplement for your down payment for your housing, as long as you stay in the guidelines of the program. There's also, I think about those older folks who are in safe places in their homes, but their cost of living or their taxes are going up, and they're looking at, borderline, houselessness. And we should think about mortgage credit certificates or mortgage credit programs, especially for folks who are over 65 and on fixed income, so they don't lose their homes. And so it's a multifaceted issue of housing. It's not just housing for the young person who wants to buy a home. It's also housing for the person who's 65, who's been in their home 30 plus years and no longer can keep up their standard of living because they're on a fixed income. And so we have to look at it in different ways. I think where the federal government plays in that space, and especially in Congress, is creating those grant programs and those tax credits for the middle class and lower income folks in order to be able to afford housing in this country.
All right, Mr. Carter.
Yeah, so I actually agree. One thing I know here in Arkansas is all the rights are in the hands of the landlord. And that's a problem. The tenants have no rights. And so I do think, again, when you talk about affordability, in reality, we need to have an economy that can support the infrastructure that's already in place. And that comes with housing, that comes with affordability of food, and so on and so forth. So I believe someone before me said, looking at the jobs, being able to pay a wage for a home. I do know in the neighborhood I live in, 10 years ago, the average price of rent in that particular neighborhood was, $500 to $700. I spoke with a gentleman that came and bought a house, and he does a lot of remodeling. And you imagine doubling, almost tripling, the amount of rent in that area, not because it's a better neighborhood, but because he says, in order for him to remodel that particular home, the economy itself, the tariffs and so on and so forth, made it unaffordable to rent at those prices once again. I still feel like it's price gouging, and I'm not in nobody else's pockets, but I feel like as a government, we should be able to put a cap on, because again, for those receiving government assistance, there's a cap on what they pay in HUD or what Section 8 will pay. And those landlords, they adjust to that particular cap. But I also think when it comes to neighborhoods and public safety, I feel like you should be able to cap the amount of money that's being paid to said landlords, because again, tenants have no rights here in Arkansas. And so moving to a base where it is again, I talk about a bipartisan effort often, that is conducive for both the tenant and the owner. I feel like we'll get farther as far as the housing crisis that we have. No, we can't even afford to pay attention right now. That's the problem with voters right now. You don't have the time because you're always working. I know a young lady, excuse me, who currently, or she was working here. I think she had to move back home, but she was working full time at a local hospital, who paid below minimum wage when it comes to the federal side of things, but statewide, I think they pay like $12, $13 an hour. I'm not necessarily sure, but she had to choose between paying daycare and actually paying rent or staying at home to take care of her child. And so she had to choose the option that was best for her and her children. And I think that was her moving back in with family. But then again, there's no legislation in place to support the tenant to say, okay, yes, I want to live in a decent home, but when it comes to public safety, I don't have the means to move in a safe neighborhood to send my kid to a safer school. So again, something that's focused on the tenant and the landlord to kind of find a middle ground, because right now, I mean, a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, $1,400, $1,500 a month, in a city in a population under 80,000, I feel like it's just not fair. But that's my opinion.
Okay, and we do have a question from the audience I feel like Dee could answer. And it's, can we address stagnant wages to address part of affordability for younger people?
Definitely. I speak to young people all the time, and I wanted to say right quick about housing. I think housing should be a priority. Everyone should have housing. But on wages, I talk to especially young people, and sometimes they laugh at me and they heckle me. And I explain to them there's such a difference between minimum wage and a living wage. Okay. Minimum wage, it just blows my mind that minimum wage has been stagnant. I think it's $7.25 nationally. And it's been like that for 20 years. That is stagnant. That is a stagnant wage, and that I have people in my community that are working 3 minimum wage jobs just to get close to a living wage. And so as a congressperson, I would absolutely demand, and I think we have smart people in the government. You might have to tell me, Ayana, if I'm wrong, that can can come up with how to mandate for, at least in the federal government and with contractors, a living wage by region or state, because this is ridiculous. Nobody's getting anything done by working 3 minimum wage jobs to try to make it. And so, yeah, this minimum wage, there again, trying to represent my constituents, they will argue with me that minimum wage is for high school students or part-time, workers. That's what it's for. And if that's true, we have to somehow be able to control what a full-time wage for a full adult is, what is fair. And so, yes, I see the stagnant wages, and I'm not going to go into it, but the numbers are wrong. The inflation numbers are wrong. When we talk about stagnant wages, we're saying that employers are not increasing the wages to a living wage compared to how the cost of everyday household necessities are increasing.
Okay, Xavier, what do you think?
So, I kind of want to continue off of what Dee is saying there, and it's criminal what we've allowed this country to do, to say $7.25 even 20 years later is a living wage. I actually had a discussion with one of my colleagues while we were at work, and I said, look, you work 40 hours a week, and in 1 month you're going to make about, after taxes, generously speaking, less than $800. And if you find the cheapest place around the nation for a 1-bedroom place, you're looking still at $500-600 a month. So you're still left with $200 to figure out all your other bills, all the food that you're going to pay for, the transportation to get to work, the levels of communication you're going to have. It's absolutely absurd. It's criminal. It's something that should have been fixed a very long time ago. And one of the fixes that I wish we would implement is, and not just wish, but something I would like to fight for, is you tie minimum wage to the inflation. I'm sorry, I'm out at a bridge protest right now. I'm actually going to jump to them after this.
Wait a minute, you're live from a protest?
Yeah.
Wow.
Bridge protest this side, on that side. We're down by the Iowa State Capitol, which is right there behind me. But when it comes to the minimum, when I tell people I'm an activist candidate, I ain't BSing you. I really am. I show up to these all the time. So, but when it comes to the minimum wage, we tie it to inflation. The reason for that is if inflation goes up, you still have to have a baseline of affordability. And what better way to do it than to say inflation was 4%, 8% for the year. Minimum wage goes up 8%, so people have the baseline of being able to afford things. But in order to even do that to begin with, we have to be able to say, what does it mean to be an affordable living wage now or today? And one of the things I liked that Dee said was, if we're going to have this discussion of, well, what's the difference between a kid and an adult who actually needs to survive? What is that number? We have a large discussion to have. But ultimately, what I would love more than anything else is if we got to the point where we're like some of these Nordic countries where the discussion, there is no such thing as a minimum wage, because the companies understand, just like Henry Ford did, not saying he was a saint, but he understood, if the people that work for me can't afford to buy the cars, who the heck am I going to sell the cars to? So if we don't have at least a wage where people can survive, what do these companies think is going to happen? Let's be realistic here. We have to take these steps in the right direction that are going to be working for the people who make this system work. I go back to that C-19 argument that I made earlier. I remembered, by the way, I remember to use the right word, but I go back to that argument. We have to understand that none of this works without the working class, period, end of sentence. I'll stand by that till the end of time. By the way, I do want to go. I love you guys. OVC, everything that you guys are doing, keep it up. You guys are going to have, actually, The door knocking I did today was with Annie Craven. You're going to have her on, I think, next week. Awesome. I love that. Keep up everything that you guys are doing. All the candidates out there, keep up the phenomenal work. Keep strong. Knock those doors, and let's make this country something that works for the working class, but it's something that works for every single one of us across this nation. So I love you guys. Keep it up.
We appreciate you too, Xavier. Stay safe.
Will do. Hopefully I get invited back. Invite me anytime. I love talking with you guys.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I'll drop you down. Take care. And that is dedication for you. Speaking of that, how are these campaigns going? How's it going? How's it going, Kendra?
It's going great. You know, this is my first time running for office, and it's really such a cool experience to, like, you know, get out and talk to people, but also like for people to be so supportive. You know, people like I barely know, they're like, "What can I do to help?" And I'm like, you know, it's a really great experience. I wish, like, this idea of community of like, hey, what can I do to help? What can I donate? I wish we, you know, shared that with our greater community, not just for candidates. But it's been really great. I just got my first endorsement from the Savannah chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. Thank you. You know, so they'll be helping with my canvassing and phone banking, which we're going to be launching in the next few weeks. And then, you know, one of the things that's been fun is because I'm never going to be the person who's like, give me like $100 for like a mediocre plate of dinner to raise money. So one of the things we've been doing is once a month, we do a collage night because I love collaging and I have way too many magazines and stickers. But the idea is that, you know, everyone who comes, you know, gets to create an image of what they want the future of Savannah to be. And so it's been a really great way to talk with people about ideas and policy and change in like a more realistic, fun way, and not just like me talking at people. But it really helps get to the core of like, what are people's dreams for this town, for the state, for this country? So it's been really fun. It's you know, a little tiring sometimes, but you know, it's all worth it.
Well, that's wonderful. And congratulations on that endorsement. Endorsements really make a difference. You get some more volunteers. You might get a little money. Amanda, how's it going?
I mean, it's going good. You know, ebbs and flows. I can't wait till qualifying so we can actually see who's really running versus everyone who's stepping up and saying, I am running. I look distracted because every hour counts. I'm literally putting stamps on postcards while we're doing this.
I am totally sympathetic. Believe me,
and so, you know, fundraising is always the challenge, but it's always the need because there's no way to contact these voters without it. And that's just where the system is. But I think more than anything, like what Kendra said, having strangers say, how can I help you? What can I do? Is so endearing and heartwarming. But more so the stories that I have collected over the time has been just great. And hearing so many diverse people, like Xavier, I'm actively in this community and doing this work. And so it's also very hard for me not to, someone gives me a pain point, I want to solve it immediately. And so there was a candidate running in Southeast Georgia from here in a small county called Ware County. And he wanted to fight for the swamp out there. And so I gave him some river keepers and I gave him Georgia Conservation voters' phone numbers. And what ended up happening was he ended up bringing them all out and they helped fight a bill that the county was trying to do, letting a waste dump next to their water source. And he ended up bringing all these resources that I gave him. He comes to my meet and greet and he says, I just want to say thank you because you didn't have to give those resources while you were on the campaign. And that helped me fight, you know, keeping our water clean in our local community. And those are the moments I love the most, is when I get to actually do the real time help. I mean, I'm going to still do this work regardless if I'm elected or not. I would just rather be on the inside where the decisions are being made versus on the outside doing all the pressure points.
And I like that about you, Amanda. And you've emphasized that before, that even if you don't win, and we're hoping that you do, you're still going to be doing the work because the work is so important. Bringing vote, like this is education and this is voters way down here, like bringing the two up to meet like that. It's so important. It's hard work. It's tough, especially when people have so many messages coming at them. it's great that we see people out in the community still working to educate voters and get people to the polls and just help people to find the resources that they need to answer their questions. So thank you for that. Mr. Carter, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. So things are going great. I do not have a primary opponent. So here in Arkansas, the way it's set up is our primary starts early voting February 17th. Primary elections on March 3rd. But I do have a general election. I do have an opponent in the general. So I've been talking to people, having massive conversations. But my team and I, we sat down, and the way that we win this race is not by getting the people who already support me to vote for me, because we have their vote already. But it's getting in rooms where people who would never vote for the things that I would vote for, or vote for the things that I stand for, but actually hearing how they're affected by the other side, regardless of what party they are in. But also our youth. I put a big emphasis in the beginning on how much I'm talking to our kids on college campuses in my area. We have been educating the youth and building a base of youth voters who will one day be our next elected officials. And so we're working very hard, working on fundraising. Carter for Arkansas.com is my website. It gives basic information about me. I'm endorsed by some teachers. I'm endorsed by some already elected officials. I'm endorsed by several people here in Arkansas, and I'm grateful to have those endorsements. But in reality, we all know that campaigns are not ran on good looks alone, because if that was the case, I would already be in.
Okay. Oh, dial it down there, Mr. Kendra. Dial it down.
But seriously though, we do need, even if you don't live in Arkansas, I tell people all the time, when it comes to POC and young black men, I'm 37 years old, the representation that I will provide and that I have provided, two-term NAACP president here in my local area. Not only that, I've been an advocate. I started a nonviolence coalition here in Arkansas, in Northeast Arkansas. I've been doing the work, as Miss Amanda stated before, long before I decided to run for office. But I also saw a need for people that share the same thought process that I do to be in the legislature. I saw a need for people and that wasn't being met. So what better way to do it than to run for office? I'm a man, but I'll be the first to say this, and then I'll shut up. I tell people all the time, I'm the pastor of a son, so when it comes to talking, I can talk. But on the other side of it, man, when it comes to me being a girl dad, me having a granddaughter, and me understanding, I go back to when my daughter had her baby, and we're standing in the room, and she's in agonizing pain. As a dad, I'm standing at her head, and I'm standing there, but as a father, I'm a protector. There was nothing I could do because I didn't understand the pain. That's the problem that we're having with legislators now. We don't understand the pain of women. And so one thing that I'm going to do when I'm elected, I'm going to have an advisor that's a woman that can tell me, hey, I don't think that's good. That doesn't help us in the long run. That's vital in this hour. Women, without a woman, where would we be? Men wouldn't exist. I know a lot of people that disagree if you want to go biblically, but women keep the house running. Women keep the house running. So I know that we need women not just to win this election, but we need them in order to make sure our kids get to school, to make sure they're fed. Like literally, we have to focus on being transparent and building an economic future for our kids. And so right now, when it comes to door knocking, I'm asking if you can spare $5. I had people in New York that they sent what they could, and I was grateful. I had some people send $1. Some people sent $36. Some sent $4.17. No amount is too small. If you can give it, and we definitely want your support. So again, I thank OVC for what you're doing, for engaging people on this platform, because we know this is where our younger people are here, and as well as YouTube and Instagram. And so I repost as much as possible. But my ask is anything that you can spare, you can go to my website, carterforarkansas.com, and you can bless us where we can be a blessing to not just the people of Arkansas, but the people all over the world. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. And Dee, how's it going?
Well, I tell you what, we are mostly strategizing, and we're kind of in a holding pattern as far as my campaign, because I know I think you talked to Veronica the other day, and she explained how as an independent candidate, we have to
Right.
do a petition. And the
Yes.
thing about, I didn't hear Veronica explain, but in my district, there's no one running against the incumbent who's a Republican, but there's 3 Democrat candidates, and they're going to have a primary March 3rd. If if one of those candidates don't get that majority vote, there'll be a runoff. So the first strategy A is, once that primary's done, yes, we hit the streets with our petitions, because I've learned from previous work in political arenas, people will promise to sign your petition, but then when you go back, it's kind of tough. So it's best to get people when you have the petition. If a runoff happens, I gotta wait till May before. So we gotta have a second strategy to be ready to still get those petitions by the end of June. So I'm ready. I'm revved up. We've got a couple of strategies. We just gotta see what happens after the primaries.
I gotcha. Yeah, Veronica broke that down, and my mind was blown. I didn't know that Texas was so difficult if you were running as an independent. And then we had another candidate on who was from Texas, and she was running for precinct chair. And she was explaining that sometimes it could even be dangerous if you're a Democrat running in certain parts of Texas. And I'm
Good thing
just.
I'm not a Democrat.
If you were a Democrat, you wouldn't even want to say, according to her, you wouldn't even want to tell people. It's
And
incredible.
realistically, I saw that interview too. She is out in the woods, okay? So when you're in Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, you're good. But yeah, she's in MAGA country. So I understand, sis.
Yeah. So in these final moments that we have left, are there any parting words you would like to leave with voters as we head into more early voting is opening up, and then finally in about 2 weeks or so, the first primary will be held in Texas and I believe Arkansas. What parting words would you like to leave with voters as far as encouraging them about you, or about voting, or about just staying calm during this entire season and making sure people get to the primaries, right? We want people to get to the primaries first and foremost, even if they're waiting to vote, like Ms. D said, waiting to vote. We want people to show up and vote for the local issues and the state issues and choose who's going to be on the November ballot in their state. Kendra, what would you like to say in these final moments?
Yes. So first, I just want to thank y'all for hosting this and having me here. And the big thing is your vote matters. Like, it really makes a difference, especially in primaries. The majority of people don't vote in primaries, and that is going to be what determines who your person is in November. So I encourage you to not only vote, but make sure you're voting in the primary for the person that most aligns with the things you care about. And then the other part is, one thing I talk to people about all the time is, even if every single one of us gets elected, it still takes you as well. Like, none of us can do this alone. It takes our communities working together and, staying engaged to really create change. So even outside of just voting, make sure you're getting involved with your local community organizations. Make sure you're supporting your nonprofits, especially as their funding has been significantly cut under this administration, because all of those things are safety nets within our community that help protect all of us. And then if you are interested in learning more about me and about my campaign, you can find me at Vote Kendra Clark on everything. It's votekendraclark.com. It's Vote Kendra Clark on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Would love your support. I would love to chat with you. If you're in the Savannah area, you can find me every Tuesday morning at Origin Coffee for Coffee with Kendra. Just come in on your way to work, grab a cup of coffee, and tell me about what you care about. I would love to hear from you.
And remind people the office that you're running for.
I'm running for State House of Representatives, District 165. So it's all in Savannah, Georgia.
All right. Thank you, Kendra. And Amanda.
I just want folks to believe that they can create the change they want to see. And we really can in this moment. As I was listening to AOC, who says the pendulum has swung one way and we have an opportunity to swing it back, and represent people and bring back humanity to government, which is desperately needed right now at the federal level. And, I am working hard to be the first Black woman elected for the 1st Congressional District in Georgia. And I hear everyone, I see them all. And I think we just have this amazing opportunity because this is an open seat, because the person who was in this seat is now running against another senator, to elect someone who's dynamic, who is well-read, and who deeply cares about this community. And of course, I'll do this shameless plug for fundraising. You can find out more about my campaign at amandaforgeorgia.com, and that's FORGA. But I'm on here on social, and my social is Amanda4, the number 4 at GA. And I really want folks to lean into hope and get out of the despair. Do not let the mainstream media fool you. There are folks making strides and doing amazing things across this country. And we can be a part of that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda. Mr. Carter.
Listen, I think I did my shameless plug a while ago, and I'm gonna keep this short and simple. Which is we have to get to a place where we understand what true democracy is. True democracy isn't Republican or Democrat. It's people over politics. It's progress over partisanship, and it is progress over being confined to a party. That's what it comes down to. There may be a R behind my name, or a D behind my name, or an I behind my name, but at the end of the day, I represent the people. If I don't get out and vote, I forfeit my right to represent the people. And so in this hour, we have to understand, I'm not even worried about a blue wave. I'm worried about a wave that's focused on the people. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what you identify as. You are human. Black lives matter, white lives matter, blue lives matter, Hispanic lives, all lives matter. But we're in a place now, we're at a pivotal point in history where human lives matter. And if we don't get out and vote, not just in this primary, not just in this general election, but in these school board races, in these JP races, these city council, we have to get out, because the people that represents us, when you get done and you get mad because you see an elected official making a comment that you don't like, remember, we elected them. You don't like it, that's fine. Get out and vote. In this hour, we have to stop giving lip service, and we have to stand up for what's right. I don't agree with a lot of things that's happening, so I'm doing my part in changing it. Whether it's running for office and being on the ballot, whether I'm being a poll worker, whether I'm passing out literature, whether I'm door knocking, utilize what you have. If you want to continue to live in what they call a true democracy, you have to exercise your right to vote. You have to shift the tide. And I don't mean just a blue wave. You have to shift the tide to where we start thinking about people and what people can do for us. We pay the salaries of these elected officials. And it comes a point in time where we have to hold them accountable. Because when I go to work, I promise you, my bosses hold me accountable at my job. If I'm not doing my job, guess what? They're going to walk me to the door. We, as tax-paying Americans, we have the right. If they're not doing their job in Washington, D.C., if they're not doing their job in Little Rock, Arkansas, if they're not doing their job right here in Jonesboro, we as citizens have the right to put somebody else, give them an opportunity to give us what we need, the human rights. So I'll bow out gracefully and say, send us to the Capitol so we can make a difference for all the voters who are watching this. Thank you, guys. God bless.
Mr. Carter, Mr. Carter, would you like to come talk to my daughter about voting? That speech you just gave, that little snippet right there. I'm at least going to play it for her because that is so powerful. That is very powerful. I feel like that should be on a national commercial, a nationwide ad or something. That is very powerful and true. This is for the people. This is absolutely for the people. We've seen a lot of politicians making moves that are anti-people. Mm-hmm. We need to get back to doing things that are for the people, making legislation that helps Americans truly and doesn't just pay lip service, like Mr. Carter said. Miss D.
Yes, ma'am. My overarching platform is truth, justice, and repair. And I firmly think we need to start focusing on politics at the grassroots level. And so that's what I'm encouraging. I can be found at d4congress.org. So appreciate you allowing me to be on this platform. I'm always having fun when I'm with you guys. So thanks and good luck to everybody who's here and everybody else who's in the chat who might be running for office, y'all. We can do this together.
All right, y'all heard them. Thank you so much for being here. Joseph Caputo, who had to leave early, and Mr. Corrigan, who had to leave early. We appreciate you. Miss Kendra, Miss Amanda, Mr. Carter, Miss D. Thank you all so much for taking the time out on your Sunday afternoon. It's beautiful where I'm at, and I'm out of the corner of my eye seeing a beautiful sun play onto the snow, and it's been such a lovely afternoon, and I have spent some of it with some very strong candidates for political office, and I appreciate you all being here. We love at OVC when the candidates show up and just are themselves. Just be yourself. Just be yourself and let the people know where you stand. You don't have to put on airs. You're not paying lip service. You're not here, representing any kind of corporation or corporate PAC. And we love that. We love the grassroots candidates. We love showing the people what their options are. People, you have choices. You have choices in the primaries where it starts for you to choose who's going to represent you in November. And speaking of that, coming up next week, which is tomorrow, we have 2 more candidates that we are hosting for town halls. If you all would please join us Monday, February 16th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be hosting Evan Turnage, who is running for the Democrat primary for Mississippi's U.S. 2nd Congressional District. And we will also have Tiffany Baker, who is running for Dallas County Judge, County Criminal Court number 1. Following that, again, please join us tomorrow starting at 6 p.m. Eastern for these 2 candidates. Beautiful young woman who is running for judge and a strong young man who is running for Mississippi. Listen, Mississippi, okay? Mississippi's House of Representatives, U.S. House of Representatives. We would love to have you all join us. Again, thank you all for joining us here, for the audience, for your participation. I saw the comments scrolling on through. There are some people out there I know who would love to be here to moderate these town halls with us. Send us a DM. Send us a DM on TikTok if you're interested in moderating or hosting. The host is the person who puts up all of the graphics and who stays silent, but we still love you. We know you're there and we appreciate you. So send us a DM if you're interested in working with us. Again, join us tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You joined us today for the roundtable, the candidates roundtable, and we appreciate you. My name is Ayana. This is OVC, Our Vote Counts. We are a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity like you've seen today, and ensure every voice is heard through education, outreach, accountability, and action. We're building a stronger democracy, one informed vote at a time. We thank you for joining us. Remember, your vote is your power. Everyone have a great week. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Thanks a lot. Bye.